Dear learners, we are going to discuss something about nature study. Nature study means somehow we are also doing landscapes. Now, nature is always very fascinating for us. Very famous philosopher Hegel says that nature is not beautiful. This is very surprising and also interesting. Why he says such thing? Let us understand. In fact, there is no beauty anywhere, nature, either in the object or even the human being. It is only the way to see it. It is totally subjective, because it is the only human being who can think, who can appreciate and who can enjoy a work of art or the nature, and he finds out beauty in nature. As an art student, it is very important you have the same kind of eyes, same kind of sense of aesthetics and sense of appreciation, through which you will understand where beauty lies. For example, when you are going to paint a landscape or study some natural objects, what you do? First thing you do, that you choose a particular spot or a particular object like a flower, leaf, trees, anything that is of your choice. Now, let us first start with a proper landscape. We had been in a park with the artist and students, and we were looking for some spot which is suitable and which will look very beautiful in a painting. The park was very ordinary one, there is nothing special about it, but we have to find out the particular spot. For this, what you need? That sense of aesthetics, the sense of find out the beautiful in the nature. For this, we chose a particular spot. There is a painting which was painted by the artist. Now, before we start landscape or nature study, few things are very important to learn. First thing is the understanding of perspective. We all know the perspective is the thing through which we can show the onlookers the depth in the space. In painting is everything about space. Let us first know what is space. Space is the area or the surface on which you are going to paint or draw something. It could be a small piece of paper 6 by 6 inches or a big canvas 34 by 40 inches or even a wall on which you are going to paint a landscape fresco. So, it is important to know your space first. You have the space, now you have to divide it in some parts. Space is the thing in which you will arrange all the objects. For a landscape, it could be a tree, it could be plants, the road, the sky, even the cloud. Accordingly, you will just arrange all these things in a very composite manner, that is we call composition. When you are using the space, you keep it in your mind. You never should leave any part in the space which will appear unnecessary. That means, you can do even without that area. That means, you are using the whole space, whole paper or the whole canvas for your subject. Now, you are using the perspective. You know the common rule of perspective. Things in the front appears bigger and thing in the distance will appear smaller. This is called perspective. For example, when you see a railway track, what you see in the front is broad and ultimately is narrowing in the background and meeting in a particular point. This is called the vanishing point. Now, when you are arranging your space, find out a vanishing point. It is not necessarily all the vanishing points would be in the middle of the space. It could be in one side or it could be in the right side, left side, and sometimes there are some perspective which has two vanishing point. That is depending on the landscape you have chosen to paint. Now, we have this particular painting in front of us that we will see in the left side. The two trees in the front, one is in the almost on the foreground and another tree in the background. You have noticed most probably this tree in the foreground is larger and higher in size than that one in the background. And with between these two trees, a spiral road or path is going towards the background. Notice the broader in the front side and narrower in the background. So, we are getting depth due to this use of perspective. Then we come to another important element, that is balance. Without balance, a composition or a picture will be very awkward to look at. For example, if you see this painting that we are talking about, the two trees are actually in the left side of the composition and there is not much thing in the right side. The artist has added a bush or plants in this side to balance the composition. And one thing more, the tree is vertical and the path between that is going towards the end is diagonal in character. So, the whole composition has a perfect balance in this picture. Next important thing is harmony. Harmony should be achieved through lines, through colors, through movement in the composition. The particular painting that we are talking about has a perfect harmony and that is also added with rhythm. That rhythm we see in the path, the spiral movement of the path is giving lot of rhythm and the vertical two lines, broad lines of the trees are balancing that rhythm. So, we can say it is a perfect composition. Now, we come to the next thing, that is color. Color is a kind of embellishment to a picture, but sometimes color is also used as symbol. It is not necessary you are always copying the exact thing from the nature, because you have some kind of artist's freedom. If you feel this leaves of the tree is a little dull or the trunk of the tree is looking deadly. So, better you use some bright colors both for the leaves and also the trunk, that gives the painting a better look. Watercolor is available both in tube and also cake, and simple thing that dilute this color cakes or the tubes is water. You need at least 4 brushes, a broad one that is number 10 or 12, then number 8, number 6 and number 4. This is enough for you to start your painting. In watercolor, you add little bit of water on the surface of the paper and let it be a little moistening on the surface, and because when you put the color directly on the paper, it will appear very soft in effect. If you put it directly on the dry surface of the paper, then it could turn into very hard look. So, always is better you start with water and then put the colors on that. Another important thing of using color, watercolor particularly, that you start with very, very soft color and light color, and gradually you move to brighter and darker color and to finish the particular work. Now, one thing also very important for watercolor, that in the finishing you can use few lines here and there that will make the painting very attractive. There is another painting we see in the horizontal shape. When we started to paint this paper, it was drizzling all around. So, the effect of the atmosphere was very interesting for the artist and the onlooker. There are lot of reflection of the trees, flowers, plants on the courtyard of this particular place. So, you can see the beautiful effect of the light on the courtyard or the floor of this building. There are some plants in the one side, and other side again the right side is almost empty. So, we have added few bushes in the end in the background, and to bring the depth or in the composition, we have used darker tone in the foreground and lighter tone in the background. So, these are all about the watercolor. One thing also very important that I forgot to mention, you are not supposed to use any white in watercolor. That means, if there is anything white in color in your subject, make it a point that you leave that part with the paper white. That means, you will use the white of the paper as your white color. The same thing you will see in the railing in the horizontal watercolor painting. The white paper is left by the artist to give it a white effect. Now, that is not all about landscape painting. There is one thing very important of landscape painting is drawing. Drawing is not only important for landscape, it is important for everything. Unless you know the characteristics and nature of the object you are just going to draw, you cannot use that in a landscape or any other kind of composition. Sometimes there is distraction when you are doing a landscape, but if you have the perfect concept about the object, then from little bit of memory you can use that to finish the particular object. So, when we start the composition or any landscape, first thing we do lot of studies in pencil of these objects, which later we use in our composition. Another medium that could be used, that is oil pastel. Oil pastel is kind of crayon that is used by the artist. The artists have used only this medium, that is we called oil pastel. For oil pastel, the same technique we used. We first start drawing. It's better you do a kind of sketch before you start to color it, and the spacing and other drawing thing can be brought in this stage. And after you are satisfied with the composition or the spacing of the paper, you can take the oil pastel. In the case of oil pastel, we can follow the same thing. That means start with lighter color or soft color and gradually move to very hard and very dark colors. The tree that we drawn here, you will see first look at the trunk. The trunk is first painted with brown or little bit of yellow ochre. After the use of yellow ochre and that color, the artists have taken burnt sienna. There is very dark brown, and with burnt sienna he has given the volume to the trunk of the trees. Next is more laborious work in a landscape, that is painting the leaves. There are so many leaves on the tree, but it is not possible to count every leaf and you color them. So, you just have an idea of the characteristics of that particular tree and its leaves. Every tree has its own kind of leaves, their own character, and after studying the characteristics, you just make a kind of motif of the particular leaf, and just sketchily you draw all over the area of the leaf and start with a very soft color and light color of the green. That means, you can use sap green or light green in the beginning and then move gradually towards viridian and dark green to bring some kind of differences between dry leaves and fresh leaves and the different colors of the leaves. To bring depth in these leaves, you can use also Prussian blue or little bit of black, and that will give the volume and the excellent effect to the trees. So, this is what we called the pastel use of color in landscape painting. So, it is better you first start with fine grained canvases that will be easy to handle, and do not forget to buy special brushes for oil or acrylic painting. Acrylic painting could be used both with water and also oil. It is your choice, but in the case of oil painting, there is no option, only you can use or a pure linseed to dilute the oil paint. For this, you need a palette. A palette must be there, and you can also have some kind of pot to keep both linseed oil and also turpentine. Turpentine make the color thinner because linseed oil is a little bit heavy and thick in quality. So, sometime you have to dilute it thinner. So, you can use turpentine for this use of the color. Acrylic dries very quickly. So, it is difficult to use oil color on the layer of another color very quickly. On the other hand, you can use this acrylic color very easily before it is completely dry. That will not make any difference. Now, the canvas you keep in front of you on the spot, or also you can paint it in the studio. So, when you choose your studio for landscape painting, you should have lot of references of your sketches that you have already started. There is a very famous British painter, John Constable, who is regarded as the first landscape painter in the world history of art. He used to make sketches on the spot almost in full details, and later he used to bring it in your studio and completed it with oil color. Now, if you have that kind of difficulty to sit in a spot for a long time, you can do also the same thing. You do some preliminary drawing in the spot and bring them back, the canvas back in the studio, and you finish with your colors, water or oil or acrylic in your studio. The landscape painting is one of the most favorite themes of the painters, because we being a part of nature, you come very close to nature when you see it in front of us, and the other interpretation of a painter who have seen his landscape in a different way than one layman can see. Artists see things more differently than a layman. It is said that artists want us to see what he wants to see. So, this is the most important thing as a painter, that you do not try always to copy the exactness of the nature. You can always use your idea, your imagination, even in a landscape painting.